I'll use an example to explain this one. So one of the challenges that I used to have was whenever I would speak at events, I'd experience a lot of like nervousness and anxiety, and it would translate to my stomach. So like I don't know again if this happens with you guys, but like I would feel queasy, right before I speak, and I would need to use the bathroom like multiple times because I'm speaking today. So what I used to do is I wouldn't eat and I wouldn't drink water before I speak at an event, right? So I'm not eating, I'm not drinking, and I'll just, try and power through the event. But then I would get tired because my energy was now low, because I'm now dehydrated, I didn't eat anything and whatnot. So what I started to do was, okay, you know what? I'm gonna trick my brain because my brain has now got into a pattern that it tells itself that she's speaking tomorrow. Like my brain knows that I'm speaking tomorrow. My brain is just like, resistance. She's about to speak. We can't let her speak. Fire, 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 fire. It's like, because the day before, everything I do, I'm setting my alarm clock. I'm like, oh, I'm going to sleep early. I'm doing all these things that is triggering my brain that, she's about to go speak tomorrow. Let's get her, so then it's like, so in the morning when I don't eat and I don't drink, again, my brain is saying, yeah, it's that day, she's about to speak. So what I did was, to trick my brain was, I now said, okay, the next 3 events I have, I'm going to do, I'm not going to do any of the things I would normally do before I'm speaking, right? So I'm like, I'm going to eat full sandwich. I don't care if I have a bad stomach. Right, I'm gonna eat my sandwiches, I'm gonna drink my water, I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna, wake up and act like it's normal. Like today's a normal day. So my brain doesn't trigger that there's an event. And I did that consistently over a period of time, and all of a sudden it stops. Because my brain now doesn't know when I'm actually speaking. Because I do everything, like this morning, for instance, ate my food, had my water, I haven't had to go to the bathroom, I'm not stressed, I'm not anxious, you know what I mean? So we have that capacity, we have the ability to actually, this thing is a tool, it shouldn't control us. Our brains shouldn't control us, we actually should control our brains, but we have to be intentional about how we work it. We also have to know that it is very personal to each of us, every single person is different. So it's your own gadget. You decide how you want to train it. You decide how it works. Even start to understand how the thing even works first of all. Before you can manipulate it, you have to actually start figuring out how does the thing actually work. And the only way you can do that is to actually get to a point where you start to really observe your inner self. We don't have time to observe our inner self in this world now. We're so busy. Everything is triggering what you're doing next. The moment you guys walk out of this door, and you check your phone, there's a message from somebody. They're like, have you picked up the butter on your way home? Pick up the cereal, and everything is calling for your attention, right? And there's an email from work, then there's this, then there's that, and everything that you've learned in this room can either go out the window, right? Because you're now you're back to unconsciousness, because that's what will typically happen is the unconsciousness will draw us in. And you're now responsive again, you're now almost a zombie, right? Versus now saying to yourself, I'm going to walk out of this room and I'm actually going to put in effort to try, right? To see how I can be intentional about this thing that I'm carrying, right? And know how I can make it work for me. Because it is your servants, not the other way around. Because if you think about it, right, and we say we're a spirit in a bottle, right? God created all of us. All of us carry a certain spirit, right? How is it possible that your spirit is put into a container and all of a sudden the container owns your spirit? I don't understand it. If you think about how movies you watch, right? All them, zombie type movies, everything. When the thing enters, the spirit is the one that controls the body. That's what happens. So how is ours the opposite? How is it possible that we've got to a point where it's you have control over this container that I put you in, and then it's nah, this container be owning me, man. It's like this container be owning me, and it doesn't happen overnight, but trust me, it is just a series of doing. And the beautiful thing about consciousness is beautiful, but it's also frustrating, is that you never actually master it. You will never get to a point in your life where you're like, I'm so conscious that I'm conscious. That's when the world will humble you. The world will like humble you. Like, you know, there were times in my life where I used to be like, yo, I'm so conscious, yo. You know, and then like tomorrow you just enter one annoying argument that will just drain you, and you'll be abusing the person back, and you're like, hey, what happened to me? You know, you're like, I thought I had the hang of this. Like, I was so sure. Like, I've spent the last 2 weeks not getting into this argument, but today's one triggered me. And you're back there. But the beautiful thing about it is, if you understand that it's a journey, and that the important thing is that every time you know that you're unconscious, that is a big win. The fact that you know is a big win. Because before you didn't know, you were just moving. But now when you can actually tell when you're doing something out of, you know, ego, right? Or out of, you can tell, like your spirit will tell you that, me too, I know that I am not, like this thing I'm doing is not necessary, but I'm doing it anyway, right? And we all have movies like that, you know, like what I have, like Adaora. Adaora comes out sometimes, you know, where I'm just like, and you know, and you know, it's harder for me because people have a perception of me, right? Like, they have a perception of me, and it's quite interesting because sometimes I'm just like, see, it's not Lumina that hired you. I'm like, don't think that Lumina hired you. You are working for Adaora. So me, when I'm going to talk today, don't be like, what happened? I'm like, yo, no, I'm going to get it out. Like, Adaora is working today, and she's going to get it out, right? And I embrace that that is part of my humanity. Like, I'm not trying to pretend, you know, I'm not trying to create some perception. I'm like, that's your perception, that's cool, but if we get into it, we'll get into it. You know, like, don't be like, oh, she's the light of the world. so she's about to just let everything slide, you know. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm not letting this one slide. Like, I'm just gonna, you know, get into it with you. But you know, but at that point, I know that I'm not doing what is right for me. Like, I can acknowledge it. I just know that, man, you just drained your energy. You know, was it worth me shouting? Was it worth me, you know, doing all that stuff? Who won in all of this? Your ego won. That's the end. Your spirit did not win. Your ego won, right? And alas, the ego will still stay on the outside. It's not going anywhere with you, right? So we have to get to a point where you're nurturing more spirit and less, you know, the ego and what your container is carrying, and understand that you can control. You have the ability to control all the parts, you know, of your body, because we do have that ability.